Okay, so I want to welcome everybody, of course, as we start. I think we're having another 11, 12 classes this week. We hope we'll see you. Please invite a friend. And Bakasha, Rabbi Leibtag, it's Lag BaOmer this week. So we're going to do Tehillim and Lag BaOmer and see what we come up with. We're all looking forward. Thank you very much.
So our series, we're talking how both Tehillim and Chumash help us we can understand Tehillim better by studying Chumash, but we can understand Chumash better by seeing Tehillim. So we're going to see two prakim today, but one relating to Sfirat HaOmer. And I'll begin with a question, see if anyone, before I share the source sheet. There's a minhag when we say Sfirat HaOmer, you can't just say Sfirat HaOmer and make a bracha and that's it. You can't do, you have to do something extra, correct? So what's a minhag? What do we do extra? Yeah. What do we do extra after saying? We say something from Tehillim, don't we? That's okay. That's short. That's a short version. What do we do after that? Maybe only Hasidim. No one has a minhag?
49. Psalm 49.
Oh no, you're close. Not Psalm 49. Why would you think Psalm 49? Because there's 49 days in the Sphira. It's actually Psalm 67, right? But it has 49 words in it. So you're close, right? Psalm 67 has 49 words. So that's the Kabbalistic reason for saying it. We're going to find the biblical reason for saying it, okay? Now, and how many of you daven Edot Mizrach? Or Edot Mizrach or even Nusach Sfard? Anybody? Don't be afraid. It's not nothing to be embarrassed of. Minhagim are much better, in my opinion. Tehillim Samach Zayin, we'll see it soon. You say every day before Baruch Shamar. Okay? Yeki said every Mitzvah Shabbos before Marv. Okay? Sfarim say every day before Mincha as well. Ashkenazim say it every year, every month at Kiddush Levana, at the end of Kiddush Levana. But it's a good parak. So I want to explain to you why we say it after Sfirat HaOmer, and we're going to use it. We're going to use this parak to understand Chumash, and use Chumash to understand this parak. Okay. So first, we're going to read the parak and see if you remember it. Let me check the chat real fast. Okay, that chat's smaller. Okay. Rabbi J, my connection's okay. We're good. Okay. So
Fine. Yeah.
Okay, we're good. We have to think where we are, and here we are. Class number 10. Okay. So none of Lag BaOmer, we're going to study chapter in Tehillim that we say afterwards, chapter 67. Okay. So when you count words, you don't count the first line because the first line is just the header. And that's it. We got this Moshe, got it? And there's more. I'm sorry, I'm giving something away. Up. Here we are. Here's the whole parak. From pasuk bet to chet is 49 words. You can count them to double check if you're bored. Now, let's look at the first line. First, let's read it. We'll do like in class. We'll read it and then we'll translate and then we'll go back. Okay. Elohim yichonenu v'yivarchenu. What should God do? God should bless us and be gracious to us, shine His light upon us. So all the land knows God's ways. All the nations should know His salvation. Okay? Then Yidu Chamim Elohim, Yidu Chamim Kulam. This up until this point, does it look familiar to most of you?
Yes.
Yeah, and you can probably sing the Nusach from Mitzvah Shabbos. Some shul sing it, Yeki sing it. It's a very popular one. Okay, now look at the first line and tell me in the chat or someone can say out loud. What does pasuk bet remind you of in Chumash? It's a prayer. What are we praying for?
It's Birchas Kohanim.
And which words are Birchat Kohanim?
Be'er Panav.
And the other one?
Chanenu.
And? Yeah, it's almost like plagiarizing, but Tehillim can do that. But now there's a reason. What's it saying? There's a reason we're praying to God that He should bless us, but we're giving the reason why God should bless us. Why? Now, what's Derech Hashem? What was Derech Hashem before the Ramchal wrote his book?
Mishpat Tzedek.
So that was last week's share. Just to remember, we did last week. here. Let's go back to last week to see how we're connected. We did Tilim last week, was Tilim Kufa, wasn't it? There was a commandment to praise God, but who's worthy of praising God? We said, remember? Okay. And Ashrei Shomrei Mishpat, and then we say, wait, we don't deserve it, and then we ask God to forgive us so we can do it right. Again, remember, that was last week's topic, and I proved Derech Hashem from the story of Sdom, and we made a big deal about it because it's the last time in Chumash that God speaks to himself. It's here. Remember, God spoke to himself over and over again in the first 11 chapters, which was universal. Keep this, is important. We did this last week, right? I told you we'd continue it. In the first 11 chapters of Sefer Breshit, at every major point in God's relationship with humankind, right, he talks to himself or to his board members. I call his board members what the Chazal called the Beitin Shomala, whoever they are, but definitely not man, someone above, because before he makes man, remember Nasadam B'Samenu, before he kicks him out of Gaden, Hayna Dam Yachad Mimeno, to be like one of us. Migdal Bavel, remember, let's go down and see what's going on. And in many other cases, before and after the flood, and when he makes woman, he talks to himself before, either talks to himself or talks to his board members. Consistently in the first 11 chapters, which are universal, never afterwards, except once, in his conversation with Abraham Avinu about Sdom, which is about how God interacts with other nations, how he expects them to be good, if they're bad, they'll be punished, and therefore God's going to check out and decide, deliberating, should he or should not destroy Sdom. And that was the last time that God speaks to himself, where God said, can I hide from Avram what I'm about to do? Because Avram's going to become this great nation and bring blessing to other nations. You see the connection between universalism and particularism? This has to be my topic because in England, everything's in honor of Chief Rabbi Sachs, Allah Shalom. And that was like his biggest topic, if you know his books. You know, the connection between the Jewish people and other nations, that's like, you know, dignity of difference. Every book, I'm sure Rabbi Alex gave a whole course on that, didn't he? Rabbi Jay? Okay. So it's all, you got it all from Chumash.
7-part series. Rabbi Yisrael gave us 7-part series in the summer.
Yeah. But the theme is all right here, that we're chosen for the sake of other nations. Okay. But what do we have to do? And this is the last thing God says to himself about why he chose us. Remember? When he picked Avram, Beschalo Gagdol was when he picked Avram Avinu to bring blessing, because God came to know him, to Avram would command his children, their children, the Shemru Derech Hashem, the way of God, to do Tzedek Mishpat. That was the end of last week's share. Now we're going to translate that. Tidim's going to translate this at a very practical level in the concept of blessing. It'll help us understand Birkat Kohanim and how it relates to both universalism and God's special relationship with us. So that was, and on top of that, this is the last time, and one of the only 2 times, where God has a dialogue with our forefathers. God only has dialogues with Avram, not with Yitzhak and Yaakov. He gives them commands and things like that, but a dialogue is only twice with Avram Avinu. The first dialogue is Brit Ben Abtarim, and the second one is the story of Sdom. Those are the big dialogues where we understand why we're chosen and the purpose of our history. Now, and therefore, it's got to be a big theme. Now, if this defines Derech Hashem, how we have to act, don't be surprised that we want God to bless us. We want other nations to know, if God blesses us for keeping Derech Hashem, then if God will bless us, let's go back to our Tilim. That was, why will God bring Yeshua to any nation? Based on their behavior. They don't look like the behavior. Right? Now, if God will bless us when we behave properly, and other nations see that the correlation between the blessing of our produce and our life and our security as a function of our deeds, then what will happen? Other nations will come and recognize you. And they'll be happy. Why? Because they'll see that God judges people with equity. And then the same word, he'll guide them with righteousness. And got that idea? Because people want to have trust that there's a just God. Now, we repeat the same word again. Yeduchamim Elohim, Yeduchamim Kulam. Now, notice that this pasuk Dalet and Vav are the same. You should have enough experience. Now, what's that going to tell you? Why would Tilim repeat the same pasuk twice? It's going to be a key of something. Anyone want to suggest? Remember we talked about what's the title, what's the structure, what's the point? This is something structural, right? When I repeat a pasuk twice, what do I have to look for?
Emphasis.
It's emphasis, but it's emphasizing what's in between. But it's also going to be what's called an envelope structure. See that? Now, if Dalet is going to match Vav, then maybe Gimel will match Zayin, and maybe Chet will match Bet. See that? Let's try it, okay? Well, let's finish the parak, okay? Ersta Nayivula, the land will give its produce. Why? Because God will bless us. If God blesses our land, when we keep His mitzvot, then the land will give its produce if we keep His laws. And therefore, by God blessing us, and then other nations will come to fear Him. See the connection? Now, let's see if pasuk bet. If Dalet, let's use all our tools here from Zoom. As long as God gave us Zoom here. If Dalet matches Vav, Gimel should match Zayin, and Bet should match Chet. Let's see if that works. Okay. That Elohim Yechonenu, Yevarchenu, that God should bless us. Okay? And what? Yevarchenu Elohim, Yirotov Kol Se'aretz. So if God blesses us, other nations will see and learn to fear Him. Okay? Why? If what? But Yeshua, that God, the land gives its produce because of God's blessing. Okay? That matches. And in the middle is the key point. It's called a chiasm. See that? This is A, B, C, D, C, B, A. Now, if you've ever happened along a Sephardi siddur, they pick up on this. Let's clear our screen. Just tell me if you've seen these in any shul anywhere. Mouse and go down. You ever see this menorah anywhere?
Yeah,
Who's seen this in their siddurim?
I did, but I don't know how to contact you, and I'm not there.
Right, almost all of you have seen this somewhere, haven't you? Sometimes you have Shivit Yashem Negit Tamid. Oh, here it is, Shivit Yashem Negit Tamid on top. Right. Now, in case you didn't notice, now in every Edot Mizrach siddur, it's before Baruch Shamar, because that's when they say it. But they have this picture also, and there's all different. And not exactly this one. Everyone has a menorah of some type, all different shapes. Google it. Do Psalm 67 menorah, and you'll see like probably 30 different ways of drawing the menorah. But you see what parak's inside? Let's make it a little bit bigger. It's our parak, isn't it? Lamnatseach, it's big tricky here. Lamnatseach bin gut mizmor shir. Okay, but here's our pasuk. Let's do a spotlight here. Okay, here yodu hamim elim yodu hamim kulam. Yodu elim amim yodu hamim kulam. See that the middle, the second branch is the same. This is pasuk bet and pasuk chet. This is pasuk Gimel and pasuk Zayin, Vav and Dalet, and in the middle of the menorah is going to be pasuk Hey. Isn't that showing the chiasm?
Yep.
That's a menorah. Now, why a menorah? What does the opening line of a Birkat Kohanim have to do with a menorah? Anyone take a wild guess? What would be the connection between a menorah and Birkat Kohanim?
Oh, that's Aaron's famous reward to light the menorah.
Reward or because you know Parshat Balot.
Oh, whatever you want to call it.
How about responsibility?
That too.
Because his main job is to teach Torah, right? And Kiner Mitzvah B'Torah or lighting a menorah is symbolic of the Kohanim's job to teach Torah, to give light. Ever since day one, I think. But the ability to perceive God is light. Now, so again, you'll appreciate why. Now, this is the Mizmor we sing here. Now, before I go any farther, let me turn off the screen for a minute so I can see people. How do I turn off my screen? I gave an analogy, but when you're in someone else's office with your computer, it's like driving someone else's car. Like you know how to drive a car, but where's the windshield wipers? Where's the cruise control? You get all mixed up. So I'll be a little sloppy today. Is there any connection between Sfirat Omer and the blessing of agriculture? Eretz Tana Yivula. You know what that means? Eretz Tana Yivula. The land should give its produce. Is there any connection between Sfirat Omer and the produce of the land?
That's when the stuff is harvested. The wheat harvest takes place between Pesach, and that's what we're
Of
counting.
course, right? In fact, we read it. If you were in Shul and Chutz La'aretz this week, we just read it. I had the pleasure of hearing Parshat Emor twice. Okay, because we're all the things up. So let's take a look in case you forgot. Right? We just read it yesterday, didn't we? In Sfirat Omer in chapter 23 in Parshat Emor. What did we read? This is all the Zionistic stuff. When you come to land and reap its harvest, you bring Omer and you wave it, remember? And then for the next 49 days, the next 7 weeks of the grain harvest, we talk about Omer every day. Now, we talked about before that Omer reminds us of the manna experience, and that we treat the land, the grain that we harvest ourselves, we treat it as a gift from God. I think we've discussed that before. Definitely somewhere in Torah Motion we did that. Of how Omer reminds us of calling our first barley. Omer reminds us of the manna experience, and the manna experience is remembering that our food comes from God, but it's a much higher level to plant your own harvest, right? And you do all the work and treat the grain that you grow. You did 95% of the work, you did it, to attribute to God as though it's manna falling from heaven. That's a high madrega. That's treating nature like a miracle, and that was the topic. But going back to our topic, it's clear that the land giving its produce. Here, let's go back to the Mizmor and Tilim now. Where are we? There we go. Eretz not Yivula. Back up. What happened to me? There we go. That was like the bottom line. Yeah. Eretz not Yivula. The land will give its produce because God will bless us. And that'll lead other nations, right, to fear God, hopefully, if they see the correlation between our blessing and our produce. Got it? Now, but we have to see what really brings blessing to the produce. Because we need to remember that our grain harvest is a function of of nature made by God, and God will bless our produce based on our behavior. And we say that every day in Shema. Now, so clearly, there was Sfirat Omer relates to the produce of the land before it gets to all the other minhagim that we have. I should have mentioned before. So we say this right after Sfirat Omer every night. We say it Mitzvah Shabbos before we begin a new week. And Nusach Sfar we say it every day before Pesukei Zimra and before Mincha every day. And I should have mentioned we do it also in Kiddush HaChodesh. And now we have this menorah. We talked about the menorah shape. Okay, now. There's another reason. This is famous Birkat Kohanim, right? Everyone knows it. Just review the words in Parshat Naso. Katos Moshe tel bnei Israel, kot tvarchu bnei Israel. Here's the blessing to bnei Israel that God should bless them. It was the first blessing of the Kohanim, following Rosh Hashanah. It's not that the Kohanim bless you. The Kohanim say God should bless you. It's the Kohanim bless them that God should bless them. God should shine His light upon them. Okay. We saw those words before. Remember, Hashem Yivarchenu. These two psukim is exactly the opening line of 67, and we should find favor in God's eyes, and let us live in peace. And then listen carefully. The samud shmiya b'nei Israel, by doing so, to associate my name, God's reputation, will be associated with the Jewish people. Right? By what? By Am Yisrael keeping the Torah, and then that will enable God to bless the people and bless the produce. In other words, by the Kohanim teaching Am Yisrael Torah and associating God's name with the people of Israel, and the correlation between that blessing and they're keeping the mitzvot, that'll bring God's name. Now, I explained Birkat Kohanim based on Sefer Dvarim. Maybe I'm reading into Birkat Kohanim, something like I claim this spot. I want to prove that that's shot based on the Tochacha and Dvarim. What do we have in Dvarim? Okay, remember Dvarim, we have like 22 chapters of Moshe's speech of how we have to behave as a nation. Remember the big speech Moshe Rabbeinu gives from chapter 5 to 26. When it's over, there's a tochacha. If you keep God's laws, if you don't keep the laws, what happens? If you follow God's laws, I'll put you in a leadership position above the nations. Now, here's the source of blessing. If you keep God's laws, right? All these brachot will come and you'll achieve them when you follow God. And I'm going to stop this share and go to a regular chumash because I don't have all the psukim here, and I got to get all the psukim here. Take a look. I'm going to open up. If you have a chumash home, even better. We're going to open up the Barim Perek Chavchet. We're going to see how central this theme is all through chumash, but remember, Dvarim Chavchet is like the end of the big speech and it's the beginning of the end of chumash. Okay, so again, we saw before, if you follow my laws, all these brachot will come on what condition? Therefore, what really brings blessing? Keeping the mitzvot. The Kohanim teach the mitzvah, and that's why the menorah symbolizes the job of the Kohanim to teach Torah. Remember, look at the word Baruch everywhere. Baruch atah be'er, Baruch atah b'sadeh, Baruch privitnecha, Baruch tanacha, Baruch atah b'vecha. Yiten Hashem b'tavecha, k'mem lechem negafim, winning wars. Now listen to Pasachet. Yitzav Hashem mitcha et habracha. God should command His blessing on you. Basamecha, in all your produce, in all your professions, and bless you in the land that God's giving you. Got it? And now you can go back to the other source sheet. Sorry. I should have just stayed there. Sorry about that. Okay. Now we can highlight everything. So we had all those blessings. And now the grand finale. Look how this relates to Birkat Kohanim. Sorry, here we go. Yikimcha Hashem lo la'am kadosh. That should establish you as an Am Kadosh. Remember, Am Kadosh is Har Sinai, but them Tilim Amlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh. You should be established as a nation separated in the service of God. Kasher nishbalach, as He promised you, toward you at Har Sinai. On what condition? Ki tishmor mitzvot Hashem Elokecha. That's not enough. Balachta bidrachav. Why am I making a big deal about halachta bidrachav? Remember, ladat baritz darkecha. So you have to keep God's laws and olech bidrachav. Now, if that happens, if we're dedicated, keeping God's laws, walking in His ways, and then God blesses us with our produce and our economy for keeping His ways as a nation, what will happen? Then God's name, reputation will be associated with you and they come to fear you. Isn't that exactly Mizmor Samach Zayin? Remember, what was the last line? Let's go back to Mizmor Samach Zayin. God will bless us for keeping His mitzvot. Okay? And through God's blessing of us, other nations will come to fear Him. And that makes us an Am Kadosh. And that's how we be blessing to other nations. I'm trying to show you that you can understand the choice of words in Mizmor Samach Zayin based on all these themes in Chumash. And based on this Mizmor Samach Zayin, I can understand the themes of Chumash the way I'm trying to interpret them. Got it? They enhance each other. And I'm saying the choice of words in Tehillim reflect these key themes in these sections of Chumash. And in light of this Mizmor, you can see how this Mizmor understood Chumash. And Tehillim is a pretty what do you call it? Not accurate, give me the word for it. What's the word? No, I'm looking for a word, authoritative. That's it, authoritative. Okay. Tehillim is authoritative commentator on Tanakh. That's our whole series, isn't it? How the Psalms are exegetes. If I'm looking for an authority, like Ramban says something, I can trust them, right? We can trust his hashkafa and Rashi. So if Tehillim is giving us interpretation of Chumash, I can assume that's an authentic and authoritative interpretation of the theme of Chumash. That's what I want to show you in Tehillim Samach Zayin. Now, so this idea of Birkat Kohanim, I'll show you from another angle. So we have it in Perek Chavchet, and then we saw. Remember, the job of the Kohanim is to teach the laws to Yaakov, and I want to show you something now cute in Parshat Bahar, because for those who read this yesterday in Israel, or for those who are going to read it next week in Chutz La'aretz, I'll show you the same theme in Parshat Bahar. Okay, let's stop this share and go back to Real Chumash for a second. In Perek Chafei in Bahar, I'm going to use a. No, we have to go back to. We were in Baker before. Here. Chapter 23, we had Sfirat Omer and everything. Chapter 25. There's 4 key sections. What happens? First, we have the laws of Shemitah. The first 7 psukim is Shemitah, correct? Nice and simple. That's followed by the laws of Yovel. 7 cycles of 7. You see the connection to Sfirat Omer? Sfirat Omer is parallel to the 7th Shemitah and the 7th and Yovel. So Yovel is pasuk Chet through Chav Daled, with all the details coming with it, and not to take advantage of it. Finally, now, in the land of your achuzah, right? Let's see, no one owns land forever. There's a division of the land when we conquered the land to the 12 tribes. Every family got the achuzah, and if you sell land, it's a 49-year lease. Every 50 years, we reset all the real estate. Now, after we have Shemitah and Yovel and have this new economic system about land ownership, we have a derivative of how this affects our day-to-day life. Now, there's going to be 3 or 4 cases of someone becoming poor, and I'll use an analogy from Monopoly. You're so poor, you have to mortgage your property. Okay? Listen what word Chumash uses for the land of Israel, an achuzah. Nowadays, an achuzah means an estate, but in Biblical Hebrew, the land you own is called an achuzah. Keep that word in mind. Okay, you listen to achuzah. Then what as a Jewish people, a family member or someone who's redeemer, who's ideally first a close relative, should come and buy back his property, because if you mortgage your property, you can't build a house, you can't build a hotel, you can't collect rent. Got it? I can't make a living if someone owns my property, but I had to sell it because I had no food on the table. So my goel, my redeemer, enables me to make a living by buying my property back for me. Then I can work. Gula is step 3. Gula enables the next step to make a living. Before I own my land, I can't make a living. Now that I own my land back, now I can work and plant my crops and make a living. That's one possibility. Okay, and then when you buy it back, you do a cheshbon based on the years of Yovel. Okay, but that's different for a year, not a property in a city. There's different laws that apply. Okay, and then we have the land of the Ari Levim, they're the achuzah forever. Okay, and then there's special laws with cities of Levim without going into all the details. Then another example, right? And a non-Jew, right, buys his property. So then we have to lend him money to buy his property back, and we lend him money not to take ribit. Remember, not to take interest and charge interest. Remember, et Menachem, etc. Now we have a beautiful summary. Listen to the summary, and I want you to tell me where it's coming from. Ani Hashem Elokechem, asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, letet lechem eretz Canaan, v'lachal Elohim. Okay. Now I have 3 examples of someone losing their property, and their neighbors, their family members, their neighbors, or anyone Jewish who sees that person in trouble has to redeem the property and help him buy his property back. Followed by this summary: I'm Hashem, your God, who took you out of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan, to be your God. V'lachal Elohim and Eretz Canaan in the concept of Achuzah. Ring a bell to anybody?
The promise to Abraham.
In what context did he promise that to Abraham? In what context did God promise?
It's the old, I know you will do this. You'll teach your children.
No, this is a different one. This is before then. I mean, sort of next door neighbor. Okay? I'm looking for a covenant with Abraham Avinu. Close. He's only one of 2. It's Brit Milah, isn't it? Let me just show you in case you forgot. Now, hold on for a minute before you lose this. I'll prove to you this is Brit Milah in a minute. Let's do it now. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll show you. I'll prove to you it's Brit Milah. I can use the same Chumash. I don't have to unshare. Here we go. Let's open up just another screen. I'll keep this one open. Open up another Tanakh over here. Here's another one. Sefer Breshit, chapter 17. Without going into all the You know what? Yeah, here. I'm sorry, I did Shemot. Breshit 17. Where are we? Here we are. Remember, Avram's 99. What's God tell Avram? Ani El Shaddai. Remember, so Hitalech Lefanev Yatamim. We all remember. The introduction to Brit Milah is how you have to behave. Remember, in contrast to Noach, what he was Tamim. He walked with God. That's what Avram needs to be. Hitalech Lefanev Yatamim. I'll make a brit between me and you. Pruvu, Arbel Kabi Mod Mod. Avram followed his face. Elohim tells him as follows: I'm going to make a brit with you. You're going to be a mentor to other nations, in which you're going to have an effect on them. They'll look up to you. Okay. We changed Avram's name to Avram to Abraham because Avram Goyim. And then Bifreit Yotcha, then Pruvu. And I'm setting you aside for the sake of nations. You'll have leadership. And here comes the big brit. There's the key words. Bakimoti briti benu benecha. I'll establish a brit between me and you and your children forever. A brit olam, an eternal brit, forever and unbreakable. What's the brit? Liot lachel Elokim. Whenever I have the phrase Liot lachel Elokim, it's Brit Milah, which later becomes Brit Sinai. Remember the 4 cups, the fourth cup, the fourth Lashon Gula. Okay. Now, but in order to be a nation in the service of God, I can't be a nation without a land. And therefore, as a vehicle to fulfill this Brit, so the land of Israel is an Achuzat Olam, where he'll be our God, we'll be his people. And in order to fulfill the Brit, I'm giving you this land. Now, as an eternal reminder, as an oath Brit, we do circumcision. But the Brit, the covenant itself is, I'm your God, you're my people, and the land of Israel is an eternal achuzah that we have in order to serve God, to become his people. Now, remember the word achuzah we had everywhere in this section? Every family has their achuzah, and if someone has to sell their achuzah, it goes back after 49 years because of Yovel. Before then, you have to buy, Goel comes and gives them their achuzah back. We had the word of achuzah in the land of Eretz Canaan, got it? And the phrase Chad Elohim. Therefore, now it's going back to what we just saw. But what did we just have? How do we apply the law of Yovel to day-to-day life? Someone is in financial straits, has to sell his property. You have to help them. Why? Remember, lend them money and don't take repeat, etc. Why? Ani Hashem Elokechem, asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, natan lechem me'eretz Canaan, Brit Milah, lo lachad Elohim. Dear God. That's all the words of Brit Milah. Now, how about if you're so poor, not only you have to sell your land, you have no land left, you have to sell yourself into slavery. You become an indentured servant, whatever it's called. You get so poor, you have to sell yourself as an eved. Okay? So the person has you own his work output, you don't own him. That's the law of Chumash. If you buy a Jewish slave, you don't own him, you own his work output. But he goes free at Yovel. Okay. And then we have what? Everyone's God's servants. Okay, I took you out of Egypt. Okay, and don't treat them harshly, etc. Now, then it says as follows. When we summarize this one, look at the summary here. Let's say it gets so bad that a non-Jew buys a person into slavery. You have to buy him back out of slavery. Okay, a family member has to do it. Now, when I finish all the laws about what happens when a person sells himself into slavery, I have another summary. That's already Ben Abtarim and Yitzhak Mitzrayim. Got it? Remember about Duvinotam? So you see how beautiful it is in Parshat Amor? In Parshat Bahar? In Parshat Bahar, what do we have? We have the derivative of the laws of Shemitah and Yovel. It sets up a beautiful economic system. But there's an obligation of every other Jew. When a fellow Jew loses his property, we have to help him buy his property back, so he's independent. And our theme is Brit Milah. Okay? If a Jew sells himself into slavery, into servitude to a Jew or even to a non-Jew, we have to buy him back and buy his freedom back. Why? Because of Brit Ben Abtarim. And it's applying our history and how we behave as a people. Now, but that's again an application of the blessing on the land, etc. That's how we have to behave, so people don't suffer. And if we act this way as a society, helping people who are in trouble, then God will bless our land, and we'll see a correlation between the blessing of our land and our economy and the mitzvot that we keep. Just for the fun of it, the next chapter, speaking, if we keep all God's laws, remember in Bukotai, and follow my laws, then I'll give you rain at the right time, etc. And then upaniti alechem v'beiti etchem siegen purvu vakimotit briti etchem. It's all in Parshat Bahar, which goes back to the theme of Har Sinai. Remember, we go from Brit Milah to Brit Sinai, and then v'natei mishkani betochem v'tokin nafshi etchem v'talachti betochem v'iti lechem leim v'atem tidei l'am. I just want to show you it's the same thing that repeats itself over and over again. Now, I'll just show you one other example. I told you how that relates back to Brit Milah. Remember, Brit Milah was Hitalech Lefanav Tamim. I'll just give you another quick example in Tehillim before we go back to, time's almost up. If I go back to Tehillim, this is not in our siddur, probably it should be. But look at this one. And anyone ever see this question? It's more than David. Okay. It's Psalm 15. There's a question. Hashem, mi yogur bo'alecha mishkan bahar kodechecha. That's a good question, isn't it? Who's worthy of dwelling in God's tent? It's the Mishkan. Remember the Omoed? Mishkon Shechina, Mishkan, bahar kodechecha, the Mikdash. Who's worthy of meeting God? Who's worthy of being able to come and visit God? Remember, we're finishing Sefer Vayikra. So we have a whole list of good behavior. But see all these things? What's it saying? It's real short. Speaking truthfully, being straight, not speaking lashon hara, not doing evil to your friend, not embarrassing him, being ashamed when you embarrass other people, honoring people who fear God, keeping your word, again, lending money and not taking interest, got it? Not taking bribes. People who do that, lo yimot lo. See the word olam? That's you'll stay forever. You'll remain staunchly as God's people if you act that way. Now, who can tell me why is this is very universal, why is the first phrase holech tamim? Where's that coming from?
That's Noach.
Say better.
No better. Enosh.
Noach was a setup, right?
Abraham.
Avram, okay, that's Brit Milah, isn't it? What was the first line of Brit Milah? Noach was a setup to appreciate Avram Avinu. Noach was chosen for what he was. Avram for what he needs to be. After Noach, we have Brit Keshet, which is the same, which is also Bakibot Brit, where God promises never to bring another flood. But because of Brit Keshet, where he's not going to bring another flood, and therefore he can't destroy mankind again, he can only fix it. In light of that, he picks Avram to start a nation to bring a blessing to other nations. That's how we go from Brit Keshet to Brit Milah and all the parallels that we saw before.
Also Yaakov.
He's in Ishtam, right?
Yoshev Ohalim.
Yeah, but he needs, but he could use some help in teaching him at the Yaakov. He wanted to be in Ishtam. Bikesh l'shevet. Bikesh l'shevet. Now, why Poel Tzedek? Remember, that's chapter 17, Brit Milah. Poel Tzedek is chapter 18, Tzedek u'Mishpat, remember? Dober emet b'vavo. And then good behavior. And it's Kut Kaspolon Tam Beneshek brings us back to Parshat Bahar. Remember? When you lend money to people to buy their property back. So it's a beautiful, I just bring you another example of our title. Tehillim 15 doesn't need a whole share, but it's a classic example of how Tehillim is a commentary on Chumash, isn't it? There's Mamash taking Brit Milah and interpreting it to day-to-day life. Okay, so now let's go back to Omer. Okay. I'm trying to show you that in Tehillim Samach Zayin that we saw, that there's a connection between God's special relationship with his people in relation to our agriculture, that God will bless our land. If he blesses our land, the blessing of our land is in correlation with our good behavior and our just society and our kindness, and the way we help each other out, we become a model nation that other nations can learn from. And then God will bless us, and other nations will come and learn to fear God. Not just to respect us. Remember, other nations will say that we're associated with God, and that will affect their behavior. Which is one of the biggest themes of Chumash, about why we're chosen to begin Sefer Bereshit, and we see it also now in Sefer Vayikra. So that was the main point I wanted to get across in the share, following our our setup of how I look at Sefer Tehillim to understand things that I read in Chumash, but I'm not sure if really that's the theme. There's no doubt that's how Tehillim saw it. That connection between God, why God picked the people, and His purpose. Let's finish up our source sheet now. So that was the conclusion in Parshat Bahar we have. Now let's go back to and we had the two. If you have your source, the two concluding lines we had. We had Kimucha Chicha, Am Hashem your God took you out of Egypt to give you Eretz Canaan. That was the Achuzah. And then when you're sold into slavery, that's the theme of Yitzat Mitzrayim, Otani Hashem Elokeichem. Now, remember, Tehillim Samach Zayin was Birkat Kohanim, Elohim Yovorchenu, Elohim Yovorchenu Yochonenu Yovorchenu V'Artad Nisala. So it was Birkat Kohanim. So just a quick review of Birkat Kohanim. Bring another example of that blessing idea. You guys know Birkat Kohanim by heart. We saw Birkat Kohanim above, but Sim Shalom, in case you forgot, I'm pretty sure we did this here a while back. But Sim Shalom is a prayer that God fulfilled Birkat Kohanim, isn't it? Remember, in Birkat Kohanim, here it is. Yasem Lecha Shalom. Just a reminder how we did this a long time ago, where Birkat Kohanim ended with Yasem Lecha Shalom, and then we pray to God Sim Shalom. And Tova, we want blessing. And remember V'chanenu. Okay. Now the main point that Simshon was making, and that's what I want to get to now, what does it mean Yer Panav Itanu Sela? He should shine his face upon us. According to Sim Shalom, the Or Panim of Hashem is the Torah. Remember? Because we want God to bless us Or Panecha. What's Or Panim? So the Torah enables us to see God. And a way of life of Avat Chesed and Tzedakah Uvracha. That's the way we act and behave and follow the Torah. The laws of the Torah are God's light that enables us to see and perceive God and understand what He wants from us. And if we follow that, then God should favor us and let us live in peace. So again, Sim Shalom fits the same theme of this idea of blessing. Now, to conclude, where are we now? I have to go back to my mouse and close up the thing and close up not the share. I need to clear the drawing. How do I clear the drawing? Clear. There we go. Now, back to my mouse and our final source. Okay, so I want to go back to this idea of grain harvest and want to show you that we did Breshit, we did Vayikra, we have to get Shemot back in the middle. This idea that there's a correlation. Let me turn off my, unshare my screen for a minute so I can see people. The main message I'm trying to show you is that there's a correlation between God's blessing of our agriculture based on our behavior. And in Sfirat Omer, when we're bringing the critical time of the year, when we're bringing in our wheat, remember we have 2 months a year to collect all the wheat that has to last the entire year. And it's a matter of life and death. During Sfirat Omer, and we use the word Omer to remind us of the man, etc. But we're worried and we want to remember that God's blessing of our produce is a function of our deeds. And therefore it should lead us to behave better. Now, that idea that God's blessing is a function of our deeds is not just a little technicality. It's going to be one of the revolutionary ideas of Matan Torah. What did I improve that from? I want to review a shir we did in Parshat Mishpatim in one of our earlier series. In case you forgot it, because it relates to about the season between Chag HaMatzot, between Chag Aviv and Chag HaKatzir. So remember Brit Sinai, we're going to be God's people. We have to get the 10 Commandments, our contract. On the same day as Brit Sinai, remember the people got scared? There's 3 more chapters of laws called Parshat Mishpatim that God gives Am Yisrael on the same day as Mamad Har Sinai. It's called Parshat Mishpatim. They began with laws of how to build an altar and how to serve God and how not to serve God. But then 3 chapters primarily of laws between man and his fellow man, and then concluding with the Shalosh Regalim and Aliyah the Regel. I'll just share my screen again to refresh your memory. Where are we? Here we are, PDF. Put that a little bit. Make this a lot smaller. That's not smaller, it's bigger. Here we are. Make it real small. Parsha Mishpatim. In Parsha Mishpatim, I'm going to show on the small version, then we'll make it bigger. We'll annotate a little bit. Parsha Mishpatim, God begins with laws between God and man. There we are. Annotate. We begin with laws, but not to make Eloi Chesed Elei Zahav, Mizbeach Admat Aseli, and we end with Shosh Regalim. In between, we have Mishpatim. We start with Ebed Ivri, and then laws of damages, the whole section of the Sikim, and then we have a second section, which was a whole set of ethical laws. Let's clear this for a second. Go back to my mouse. And what was important, wait, that's not getting bigger for some reason. Something's wrong. Okay, oh, here we go. That's it. The whole second section, there was laws that go to Beit Din, Mishpat, and then we had the Tzedakah section. It began with Beger lo toneh v'lo techotzena, because you were strangers in Egypt, and ends with Beger lo techatz. Remember, these two match each other. And this one. And in between was a whole set of laws about how to treat other people, the widow, the orphan, the stranger. That goes back to lending money in Kesef Tavet Ami, not taking shochad, returning lost items. There's a whole section. Now, we finished the whole section of ethical laws. And watch what happens. This is back in Parshat Mishpatim. Right? So my mouse is not good here. Okay. Then it says like this: 6 years work your field, the 7th year Shemitah, 6 days work, in the 7th day Shabbat. Remember? Okay. So we have Shemitah followed by Shabbat. Okay. Again, 6 years work your field, the 7th year Shemitah, and then 6 days work to your app, and the 7th day you rest. Again, so your workers have a day of rest. That's the concluding law of the ethical laws, that even Shabbat and Shemitah have a element between man and his fellow man. Then we're going to get to the Shosh Regalim, and the Shosh Regalim, they're presented. Remember, they're Chag Aviv, Chag HaChetzer, Chag HaSeif, they're agricultural. But before I get to those laws, we have a summary line. Keep all these laws I told you, and don't you dare mention the names of other gods. Not to mention them. Who are these other gods? On the critical times of the agricultural year, people tend to turn to the gods in charge of agriculture. So Canaanites turn to the rain god, the Baal, Tashirat, the fertility god, the Gonzam, grain god. And God's telling us, no, don't turn to those gods like the Canaanites did. Rather, on the critical times of the agricultural year, you need to remember that your agriculture is a function of your deeds, which was the whole thing we saw all through Chumash. And therefore, why do I have these 3 pilgrimage holidays? On the critical times, as soon as their grain harvest begins, right, I gather in the Beit HaMikdash to remember that God's interaction or God's blessing of the land is a function of our deeds. And then I thank God at the end of that grain harvest and worry about my fruit harvest. My fruit harvest is over in Chag HaSeif. I thank God for my fruit harvest and worry about the rainy season coming up with Hoshana, and that's going to be Sukkot. Got the idea? So there's a deep connection between our agriculture and our behavior. And that was this theme that you see in Parshat Mishpatim, this transition. Keep everything I told you. That's the main difference between idol worship and the Torah's vision of serving God, which we call the roots of ethical monotheism, where the belief in one God, not just believing he exists, but the understanding that God blesses society as a group based on our deeds as a society, as a people, and we're all responsible for one another, and we have to help each other out. God says, act properly, and nature will work with you. Don't act in a way that gets got upset, he'll use nature as one of his tools to punish you. Now, if people see that correlation, that'll bring to people recognizing how they should behave. That's different than idol worship, where I press a button and say, I want this God, tell me with this. I pray to a rain God for rain, or fertility God for fertility, or for a a sun God to give us heat at the right time, or have the crops grow and things like that. In idol worship, there's no correlation between behavior and your ritual. In Judaism, we need ritual, and we come to the temple, but it's to remember that God judges us. This one God, who's only one, judges us based on our deeds. And that's a revolution in religion. Now, with that, I want to end with our title of the shir, which I hope I don't get in trouble for. Remember, we had this, the other title was, the main shir was sing Tilim and using Tilim to understand Chumash and vice versa. Now, on Lag Bomer, there's this custom of Har Miron. I don't want to get into politics and other things like that, but some rabbis are for, some rabbis against. Again, I don't want to get myself into a machloket, but there's plenty of rabbis pro and plenty of rabbis against. But the danger when the main way you serve God is going to some high place, some high mountain with special things, and if you want a blessing, it's bringing shechting a keves on Har Miron and dancing and singing, which is wonderful. Now, if that experience will be transformative, it'll make you a better person, so that's fine. But if you just see this only something magical and mystical, and go to this one holy place and God will bless you because someone else was here and someone else was buried there, and it's not transformative in any way, it doesn't reflect at all Parshat Mishpatim and everything we saw so far, then it can become counterproductive. There's a value in religious customs of ritual which are transformative, but when they're lacking any transformative meaning, it doesn't change behavior. In fact, when the people go there and the behavior is not considerate of other people, and and not keeping within law and things like that, and not respecting other people's health and well-being and stuff like that, then that can become a disaster. So it's something to think about on Lag Bomer. That's funny things. Again, I'm not saying pro or against, but whenever there's even Birkat Kohanim, anything technical, rituals are super important. They're the key to our religious life, but they have to come with meaning. They have to be balanced with their values. And that's why what I'm trying to highlight in the series, when you look at the prakim, when you take a mystical mizmor, it has 49 words in it, like Tilim Samach Zayin, and say this for mystical reasons to get a blessing, right? When you look at the depth of the parak that Chazal picked, that the Kabbalists picked to quote, it's way more than mystical. It's not just because of 49 words. The whole theme of the parak is the essence of Sfirat HaOmer, where Sfirat HaOmer is reminding us the correlation between our agriculture, the grain that's growing, and our livelihood, and our behavior. So when you understand that theme in Tanakh of Omer and Chalka Katzir, and the theme of why we're chosen to be a people, and the connection between our being chosen and God's interaction with all mankind and a responsibility to other nations, then I think that reading that mizmor is super meaningful at a pshat level, and hence the mystical meaning of it. But I think when you have only the mystical meaning, that's when you can fall into a trap. That's why I want to share with you on Lag BaOmer. I think my time is up. I'll take questions real fast. Okay. Oh yeah, we have Simchat Yom Tov. Okay, very good. Already. Any other questions? I didn't see the chat too. My computer's really small here. Anything else? Anything in the chat, Rabbi?
No, not
Okay.
really. No.
Okay. So
I have
the main.
I have
go
a
ahead.
question.
Go ahead.
The Stone Chumash, my translation here says, all the people shall acknowledge you. And there's other translation, all the people should thank you.
So thank you for that comment. Or I should praise you for that comment. You understand? Hodaya, when you say Modim, remember Modim? Hodaya? Are you thanking God? Or are you acknowledging God?
I thought thanking, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
So that's Rabbi Jay has a whole series on the Siddur. When are you going to get the Modim, Rabbi?
When I get to Modim, we just finished Rabbi Yishmael. And we're
Oh.
introducing
No,
these
no.
here, kind
Yeah.
of by Levit after 31 classes. So you tell me when we're going to get
Remember, yeah. Remember, Hodu Lashem Kiruv Shmo? Does that mean acknowledge God or thank Him? You tell me how they go together. You have to acknowledge, right, that God is in charge, right, and thank Him when He gives you you have to acknowledge that God's blessing is a function of your deeds, and therefore thank Him, even when He helps you, maybe even when you don't deserve it. But the acknowledgement, the hodaya, it's not just thank you; it's also acknowledging. It's the recognition of your relationship with God.
So it's
So they go
both,
hand in hand.
it's both meanings is what you're saying?
Yeah, for sure. It's got a double meaning. When you say thank you to somebody, what's that mean when you say thank you? You're acknowledging that they gave you, or you're just thanking them for what they did? It's a mixture of the two, isn't it? Yeah. But look, there's tons of people talk about it, about Hodaya, about Modim. Look in all the Siddur books about Hodaya. Or wait 3 years until Rabbi Jake gets there.
the lesson. Well,
Siddur.
we don't exactly, the Siddur expands, so it
Uh-huh.
intertwines. We're just sort of going through Rabbi Yishmael, but yes, we talk about all kinds of interesting ideas. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Next week back in Israel.
Back in Israel, yeah.
So
Back
was there
tomorrow.
a special minion for the Israelis to hear Parshat Bahar?
No, we're not that.
That's
we're-
good. No,
we're
I'm
not
glad.
bonus,
I'm
yeah.
glad you didn't do that. Yes, that
Yeah.
was there's I really think maybe I shouldn't say it, but I know you agree with me. This shows the weakness of the rabbinate, that we had, the weakness of contemporary Judaism, that we haven't just said Achrei Mot Kedoshim this year. We're not waiting till Matat Maseh. The first week we're going to catch up. It's just, I understand that 500 years ago why it didn't matter, but today it's whatever. Okay, that's my personal opinion. Rabbi, you disagree with me, or
No, I agree. It's just sad that there's no rabbinic.
that's what I meant. There's no rabbinic leadership to say a million people, anybody who travels for the next 3 months between Israel and America or London is going to get messed up on they're going to one parsha twice and they're going to miss a parsha. It's ridiculous.
But then when that happens, you have what to pray for Achdut. You don't pray that rabbis will fix it. You pray that we'll be unified enough to be that we able to have rabbis to fix it.
Right. That's correct. That's the problem, because if you do it, whoever would do it, that'd be considered non-Orthodox,
But it's like looking at Harabite and saying, because of the mosque, we can't have the temple. No, because the mosque, it's a reminder we're not worthy of a temple. Okay? The mosque is not the Siba, it's a Siman. No, it's the reason when you see the mosque, if it was gone, we'd have a temple. No, it's there because we're not worthy for a temple. You got my point?
I get your point.
Yeah.
I get it. I've heard you said it before many times. So, yeah, but it's good. The important points need much repetition. That's for sure. Okay, tomorrow at 1 p.m., Simi Peters, Megillat Ruth. That's 6 classes. We're class number 4, I think. It's tomorrow, and then tomorrow night, Mark Shapiro, who is, by the way, he's going to be going just really till Shavuot, and then he's taking off for the summer. Then before him, we got our trips. Please God, our Portugal trip is basically sold out. Maybe we can squeeze in 2 more people if anybody wants to go, but there is room on our Italy and Spain trips. Please God, after 3 years, we will be resuming our trips through Jewish history. They are fantastic trips. They're really quite beautiful, and but they are Jewish history trips. So we see a little bit of the general culture, but we focus on Jewish history. That's just, I'll throw that out. And then we have all with Shavuos and travel. So Mark's class will be ending in before Shavuot, and then we'll resume sometime in the summer, towards the end of the summer. I don't know exactly when. Okay, and then we have all our rest of the classes. Tuesday, both Malka Simkowitz and Michelle Chesner are finishing their series on ancient Judaism and the book, the Jewish people, the book, but our regular class is continuing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, of course. And this week, Parshat HaShavua will be given by Shira Hecht-Kohler of Queens, New York, I believe, works at 9 to 9. She's spoken for us in the past, and so that'll be this Thursday night, 8:30. Always please invite a friend, and it's not baltos if you invite 2, where there's no prohibition to invite 2 friends also. Okay, everybody, have a wonderful week, and we look forward to learning with you in the near future, and always open to your ideas and suggestions, and be well, everybody. Thank you. Rabbi Leibtag, have a good trip back. Enjoy.
Here you go.
Okay.
I'm on. I was just listening. I had it on mute.
Oh, that's
Okay,
fine.
okay,
When
we're here.
when are you heading back to Israel?
Tomorrow,
Tomorrow or tonight?
tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay.
Tomorrow morning's British Museum, and then
Uh-huh.
we go back. You can't go to
Okay.
London, not stop in the British Museum.
Yeah, okay.
And
I haven't been to
and-
London since
And
1994.
we
I
have
was
to thank
last
the
in London.
British. We have
Yeah.
to modeh to the British for stealing all the things from Iraq and Iran and the whole Middle East, because if they didn't steal it, it would have been destroyed. So,
Uh-huh.
so sometimes there's always good. Sometimes it's good to do Geneva
Yes, it depends who you're stealing.
for the sake of mankind. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. Okay, enjoy. Your wife is with you, I take it?
No, no, no,
Oh, not with you. Okay.
no, no.
Going to the British Museum on your own.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Enjoy.
Thumbs
Say
up.
hi to the
Okay.
Queen if you bump into her. Okay. I know they're having some big thing
Oh,
next.
it's
I
good.
don't know
No,
when
they
it-
blessed in the shuls. I was davening in United Synagogue shul.
they
United,
pray
you know,
for the
yeah.
Queen, of course.
Yeah, there's a whole thing on the thing. And
Yeah.
the Queen is so nice by staying. There's a whole plaque like in marble with the prayer for the Queen. So it saves them a lot of money when they have the same Queen for 50 years. They don't have to change the prayer. No, the second they'll change her name, they have to change.
Well,
So-
when I was a
So,
kid,
so they're
I was-
Chasam Amanim Sheyisrael. They're
right.
they're
When
worried
I
about
was a
the-
when I was a kid, they used to sing "God Save the Queen" in school till the Canadian national. Oh, Canada became much more like.
Well, that's it. You guys are part of the Commonwealth. That's right.
Yeah, we're part of the Commonwealth. We said "God Save the Queen."
Yeah.
So I was never alive when God Save
Yeah.
the King.
What's the-
You know,
what's-
I'm only a God Save the Queen person.
What's the name of the highway from Buffalo to Hamilton and to Toronto?
QEW, very
Right.
good. Way they named that highway. They made it. I don't know if they made it for her or renamed. I think they made it for her when she came to Canada in the 1950s, the Queen Elizabeth Way. If you ever drive when you cross the border at Buffalo, that terrible, killing yesterday in Buffalo. I'm sure everybody heard terrible.
Mhm.
Just 90 miles away here, so the people who are injured have a refuah shlema, but you drive on the Queen Elizabeth Way, the QEW, as they call it, the QEW. And every morning on the traffic reports, in New York, you hear, the half an hour delays at the Whitestone and the Throgs and George Washington. In Toronto, you hear the QEW eastbound, is
And
back.
and the 401.
And the 401, you're good. If you want to go quicker, go on the 407. It's a toll highway, so it's not quite as crowded. The ET, that was the first one in the world, the electronic tolls. Now they have them in a few places, but we were the first ones. Okay, we were the first one with a Dome Stadium that opens up.
It was the first
back in the
controlled access highway.
It was the what? I'm sorry.
QEW was the first controlled access highway.
I don't even know what that means. What does
Cloverleaf.
controlled access highway mean?
With clover leaves. Instead of
Do you remember when they opened the QEW?
yeah,
When was it? What year exact? I think in the 50s. No, I mean,
it
no.
was in the early 50s, right? It was the first controlled access, even though there were places where it wasn't. You still had the going over the like until they built the Burlington Bridge. It
Mhm.
was there was when ships came through, the bridge it opened and you had to stop and wait.
I remember
That happened to
that,
us once. We actually got caught. The Burlington Bridge was closed. We had to go lower it. This was 5 a.m, going to visit my kids on visiting day in camp. So we left Toronto 5 a.m, and all of a sudden we come to the Burlington Bridge was closed. Okay, who's driving it? So we had to go to the bypass, and then all of a sudden a ship came, opened up, and we got stuck. So wow, I didn't know they still had these things.
That's how it was in the old days. But
But,
that Queen Elizabeth Way was the first controlled access highway. And then the 400 series became the series for highways.
Right.
400 was the
Right.
first, but after
we got the
Queen
407, the
Elizabeth
401, the
pioneer.
413, the 409. Yeah. But the
Right.
401 is
401 was the
401
second one.
for Americans who've never been on the 401. The 401 is a 12-lane highway. You have the local lanes and the express lanes going both ways, 3 lanes each. So it's a 12-lane high, I think, and they're expanding it at certain point.
But it wasn't. It was only a 4-lane highway, and that was what's so special about it. I grew up with it behind my backyard.
Yeah, of course.
And
Yeah.
I grew up before Spaghetti Junction was built, before the Skyline Expressway was built.
Well,
We used to- we
there
used
you
to
go.
have-
See, I'm a young guy. I thank you. You make me feel very young. I grew up. There was a Spadina Expressway when I was born, and all that stuff. The only thing is I don't remember the Toronto Maple Leafs winning the Stanley Cup. But what can I do? But you know, that everything has its good and its bad. All
As
right.
a kid, we had picnics where Yorkdale is now.
Oh, really? Oh, you
It was
remember
a field. It
Yorkdale?
was an open field.
Oh, wow. That's like a different door. That's like the Frida Gadoiris. Everybody, I don't know why anybody is still listening to this. You know, I mean, you're welcome to stay. Why is anybody? I mean, for me, a Torontonian talking to all Torontonians, this is interesting. Why anybody else find this interesting? Find it wild. But Yorkdale, you know, the Yorkdale is, by the way, is I still believe the world's most successful shopping center. It was built by Azrieli, the famous Azrieli family. Yorkdale Mall. It's really still world. I don't know. It's just a phenomenal mall. It's a great location. It's always got just really, really top mall. But anyways, who's been to Yorkdale, right? Who's not from Toronto? Who's been to Yorkdale?
Yeah, I remember a brush fire.
You remember? I'm sorry.
I remember a brush fire with 120 Shelbourne.
Oh, 120 Shelbourne. Sure. Okay.
There was a brush
Yeah.
fire that one.
Yeah, listen, my kids, I talk about this. And I remember when the city ended at Steeles, there wasn't Thornhill. People, what do you mean there wasn't Thornhill? The whole city lives in Thornhill today. You know, and anybody under 40, a Jewish from lives on, you know, Kimat lives in Thornhill. Well, what do you mean there's no Thornhill? You know, that was all farmland. So, you know, everything, every generation remembers, you know, what there was. So the city used to end at Steeles, now goes further. If Mr. Besson is still here, he probably left a long time ago, one of our younger Torontonians online, but he's not here, so he could attest to that. Okay. All right, everybody, have a great day. And I really appreciate people listening to all the Narishkes we talk about, but I hope you like the Shir a lot better and much more important. Okay, everybody, have a wonderful day. It's good to talk about stuff, but that's, oh my goodness, 12 lanes. Yeah, it's not 12 lanes, like it's 6, but the 6 are divided by a total barrier. There are only certain places you can get up at the express and the locals. It's not, you never have more than 3 lanes like at one time. It's not as crazy as it sounds, but you know, it is a 12-lane highway. Okay, and it's crowded. Come in the morning, and you get caught in traffic in rush hour. That's everybody knows the theory of building highways. Whatever highway you build, more development goes up, more cars, so it never works. All right, Yom Tov, everybody. Shavua Tov. Thank you.